Here with Nick Dearden. He's the director of the Global Justice Now campaign group. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
I know proponents are saying that breaking down barriers, will benefit the consumer because products and services become cheaper. What's your opinion?
Well, we really dispute the benefits that have been talked about in terms of jobs, growth, and even in terms of cheaper products. Actually, a number of studies that have been published now have shown that sure, it may create jobs in one place, but people are going to lose jobs in another place, up to 1 million jobs actually just in the European Union. So actually what you're looking at is an entrenchment of inequality in Europe. And I mean, even on the cheaper goods side of things, I mean, if you look at what happened in, for example, Mexico under the North American Free Trade Agreement, actually many staple products went up in price at that time. It was more expensive at the same time as people were losing their jobs and their incomes were being slashed. And we fear exactly the same thing could happen here in Europe.
Which kind of sectors or markets would be most at risk?
Well, one of the things we're very worried about is the farming sector. Especially the more local and the more organic produce that farmers are selling, we find it very, very difficult to see how a lot of that produce is going to be able to compete against really big-scale industrial agriculture as is practiced in many parts of the United States. And indeed, we found out recently that under the sister agreement of TTIP, which is called CETA, the Canada-EU agreement, the UK hadn't even managed to get any of our iconic produce, our geographical indicators, as we call them, protected. So things like Stilton cheese and Stornoway black pudding, these kind of things aren't protected. And we see no reason why they'll be any more successful in TTIP. But also small businesses. So there's been a lot of talk that this is good for business. Well, we think, yeah, it is going to be good for a certain type of business, but probably very big multinational business. Most small businesses don't export abroad. They're just simply going to be subject to more competition from big business. Most small businesses won't be able to use the special investor protection rights that are most controversially part of TTIP. We haven't heard much from those sectors in the debate so far, but in other countries we have. So in Germany, for example, small businesses up in arms about TTIP, publishing even full-page adverts in national newspapers to explain to the German public why they don't like it. And we think over the next year, similar voices will start being heard in this country too.
There's been big talks about, the poultry that's, basically disinfected with chlorine, stuff like that. How far can this go, and is this really an issue?
Well, the worry for us is it can go very far because TTIP is a living agreement. So whether we get the chlorine chicken, the hormone-fed beef, the beef on steroids in the actual agreement or not, they may appear at a later stage as part of this long-term regulatory cooperation agenda. So because we insist on higher standards for our food production methods, that's seen by big business in the US as a trade obstacle. And that's why TTIP really is a threat across society, no matter what it is that you're concerned about. And we may have different views on whether we should introduce genetic modification into farms in the UK, but the important point is there needs to be a democratic debate here about that. This isn't just something that can be traded away behind closed doors by negotiators we haven't even elected.
And so who would lead the debate in this country then?
Well, so David Cameron this week at his own party conference, Conservative Party conference, has trumpeted TTIP again. And we know that he's been a full proponent of TTIP all the way along. But some of his backbenchers are unhappy about it, and we're beginning to see now farmers and small businesses unhappy about it, and that will put pressure on him. Up to now, the opposition parties have mostly been critical, but not completely opposed to TTIP. We hope that's going to change now. We have a new Labour Party leadership. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader, and John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, have both been very critical of TTIP over the last year or more. In fact, John McDonnell's going to be speaking at a rally this Saturday where we think for the first time in office he will speak out against TTIP. I'm off to the Scottish National Party conference next week to try and persuade them to turn their red lines into total opposition to TTIP, because we just don't see, given where this deal's come from, given how much lobbying there's been by some of the biggest companies in the world and what the negotiators have said and what we found out through leaks that have come through WikiLeaks and so on, we just can't see any of this treaty would be beneficial for ordinary people in the United States or the European Union.